Okay, we are live. What's up, y'all? I am with Ginger Kern. And Ginger, let me just introduce you while I have your immaculate bio here. Ginger Kern is a writer, mentor, and guide, and becoming a good friend, a friend of mine and my wife's, for women on the path of the devotional feminine. She's the root of Mythic Feminine. Is that what yeah. An ecosystem supporting women in soul nourishment and union with men. Her work supports women in restoring sovereignty, soulfulness, and full range embodiment of truth in service of life. We've only had a few interactions in person, but we have a lot of fun in the DMs and discussions and whatnot. So I've appreciated that. And why are we here? What led to this conversation? Um, I'll speak for me and a little bit of my intention and why, and then I want to throw it to you, Ginger. A lot of people in my community follow Aubrey Marcus, and personally, I have nothing against Aubrey Marcus, Vylana, their lifestyle choices. Everyone has free will, and I am not a police officer or moral authority by any means. But I have received a lot of messages, mainly of confusion. I mean, that's the main thing. Yes, some stories of trauma. I used to be in a polyamorous relationship, and I had chronic health issues develop, infertility, betrayals. There's been trauma stories, which again doesn't make the thing wrong. It's just an observation, and a lot of what I got was just confusion. This sounds things sound true here, things don't. It's confusing. My body feels like something's off, but my intellect goes, wait, I kind of agree with these principles. And then there was just outrage. A lot of women just, and mainly women, I don't actually think maybe two men reached out to me, uh, feeling a lot. And so my call to response was, let's just bring some clarity to some of the principles, some of the language that I think is making a very important topic. I mean, this will come back to someone's worldview and values and what they build their life around. Everyone is in some form always in a kind of relationship, right? So my intention is to bring clarity specifically to a quote from the podcast that Vylana sharing in the podcast that was actually brought to my attention through you, Ginger, and sparked a lot of inspiration. So I'll throw it over to you to share a little bit about why you're here, and we'll get into it.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I also will just say I'm mostly here in service of the women that I already serve. So while I know this video is going to be seen by other folks that don't know me, have never seen me before, I'm here for my gals. I'm here for my women. And the women who tend to find me or come into my orbit in closer ways, programs, one-on-one mentorship, whatever, it doesn't really matter, are aiming, eye on the prize, so to speak, at lifelong, covenanted, monogamous union. So that's just who I tend to attract nowadays. And similarly to you, Brendan, so lots of DMs following this podcast, which I will be very transparent about a lot of things today. I have not listened to the podcast. As of now, I don't plan to. I might, we'll see. I'm very attentive to language. I also agree with your first statement, free will, free will, free will. I have zero judgment in terms of, lording my personal desires over another human being. In this video, my desire is really just to serve the women who have come towards me and asked for counsel, asked for witnessing, asked for support, and then frankly also have come out of the woodwork seeing my comments on certain related or adjacent posts saying that they are collapsing with relief to finally find another woman who clearly both feels this way, can articulate it, and is also living it in terms of contained, leakless union. And by the way, another transparent fact, I am not yet married to my soulmate who's downstairs. We had a lovely morning together. But I want to say this stuff on record because, yeah, Brandon, like what I appreciate about you is you have this way of creating space for the nuance to come through in a clear way that can touch back into biology. It can touch back into formal logic structures. It can touch back into religion if need be, although I don't think we're going to go there today, for example. But I'm just happy to be here, and yeah, let's dig in. Let's do it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we were talking, I love your brain. And we were talking about how truth, um, well, I'll put it this way. One side effect of being in untruth, which at the level of the mind and psyche is dissonance. And dissonance is I'm saying one thing, but living or experiencing or doing something else. At the level of mind, there's dissonance. At the level of body, there's disease. So at the level of mind, dissonance appears as broken logic, and we call that fallacy. And so there's ways of, rather than identifying truth as this, as if I'm like the most qualified to do that, rather undoing the what's not true can then point to something that's more true, that typically the expression of it is spontaneous, depends on the context. I can't say this is one true thing and that's an untrue thing. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I think it's so valuable to point out the fallacies in logic that are the basis of deception that actually justify behavior that creates suffering. And really,
Exactly.
ultimately, that's what it's about. It's,
Yeah.
well, if I don't respond, I'm kind of saying yes to um, promoting a way of being that has to lead to suffering. So I'd love, Ginger, if you would start with your breakdown of what fallacies you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm just going to focus on this very small text snippet that is apparently quoting by Lana. And another thing that I just want to say is I don't know her. I have nothing against her. In fact, I actually feel like a deep sense of just love, like deep love and fierce. This is where words fail me. It's like across time and space, fierce sisterhood, which makes no sense because you'll probably, the rest of you listening to this, you're going to hear me say things that are critique of her words. And a lot of you will be inclined to make it mean that, yeah, that I'm like judging her specifically as a woman, which I'm not. However, I think as an observer, you said you love my brain. I'm always witnessing words. I'm witnessing language. My background is in languages, and I want to be very clear that like when I read a post on social media, especially one that is making a lot of claims one after another, I'm not only running it through my body as a woman who's very sensitive and I feel a lot, but I am ingesting it and digesting it in my mind, and I'm looking to see is there coherence at the level of language and logic, because that's the expression of the inward game, so to speak. So one of the claims that, well,
Ginger, can I just add one thing really quickly?
yeah,
I love the personal touch, just where you're going, and I do
yeah,
want to also share. I have been in this level of dissonance in relationship, and it was
same,
devastating, like internally devastating, insomnia, chronic. I've never had chronic issues until a level of dissonance in relationship where on the surface I could share and teach about it and people would go, wow, this sounds amazing.
yeah,
And I'm literally unable to sleep more than 2 hours per night for 6 months. I mean, so I'm also speaking from
yeah,
let's help people not do that. And I'm
yeah.
not saying that that's what they're doing. I'm saying that any level of dissonance that typically gets exaggerated in relationships can lead to that kind of suffering.
Right. And obviously what you and I are both here for is like more life force in the world. What we actually, and by the way, life force on all levels, all the way up, all the
Mhm,
way down, not just peak experience based life force. Also, my
mhm,
hair is looking so fabulous today. I was just noticing.
mhm. That it is.
It's a peak experience. Okay.
It's-
No, so one of the things that I definitely want to say straight up is, as you sort of alluded to, you as an adult, as a sovereign adult, which all of them are in this context, you can do whatever you want. My personal preference, because I desire to live in alignment with reality and also have a somewhat as much as possible shared reality in language with people. You can do whatever you want, just be honest about what it is. Don't call it something it's not. So one of the things that stood out to me in the very first sentence, she writes, quote, "I always imagined myself in a traditional monogamy." Um, and then, of course, the rest of the post is going on to say how she is no longer, she's not in that. And she only briefly experienced such a thing. And I have heard the phrase that they've been using is radical monogamy and expanded monogamy, I believe. Those are the two terms they seem to toggle back and forth between. What I need to point to here essentially is like, there is a philosophical principle that's being violated here, and that is the law of identity. A equals A. A is A. That means A, or that entails A is not B. So for example, she goes on to start to talk about, her discomfort, right? Her previous experiences of infidelity, her previous experiences, which you can infer are or were traumatic to her. And then where, again, this law of identity gets sort of broken, or really broken, is she is starting to talk about the literal infidelity that is occurring inside of her marriage. So infidelity inside of her marriage as expansion or liberation. And it's a rebrand of discomfort. It's a rebrand of infidelity. It's a rebrand of trauma response, which violates the law of identity. And again, these women who are coming to me in the DMs, they're like, what is going on here? This can't be sacred union. It doesn't feel right to me, but I don't know why. I'm like, okay, well, like, let's look, So a painful experience can't simultaneously be expansion and pain unless the pain is itself acknowledged as the price or the catalyst for that growth, which she very well is acknowledging as well. The issue that I take here is clarity. If she's wanting to be clear about this and teach others and share, it actually requires semantic precision. Because if she's not being precise with language, it's going to be clouding everyone's experience. So yeah, this is just like a very mini starting point. Law of identity, A is A. A is not B. A man is not a woman. That's another outcropping of this same principle that we see being broken over and over and over again in society right now.
Yeah, and I think a danger of this, well, really, it's a downstream effect of a worldview that's hyper subjective, right? It's like
Exactly.
postmodern.
Exactly.
I will change this definition to conform to my worldview, right? And now, if everyone is recreating definitions of everything, you just have mass confusion. And now, who are the truth deciders? Well, you are based on your own definition, and now there can't be accountability because it's like, oh, what you did was wrong. I believe is right, so it's not wrong.
Right. So, and it goes back to the thing is language actually has to mean something,
Hmm.
which is a defined category. Otherwise, all language means anything, meaning you and I are speaking gibberish right now.
Hmm.
So language either means something or it means nothing.
Hmm.
It's a binary, like
Hmm.
philosophically, and also, guess what? In reality.
Hmm. And this is also why I love biology, because what separates us from animals is we can lie to ourselves about our nature. So a cat can't try to become a bush or a seal, but we can be someone. We can attempt to be someone we're not. We can create a symbol of who we should be or what we shouldn't be, and we can override our instincts. But the instinct is a binary. The instinctual response is on or it's off.
Exactly.
And what I love about German New Medicine is you can scan someone's brain and see this profound connection between psyche, brain, and organ, how they're not, confirming our intuitive sense that they're not separate. They are an inseparable, interconnected system. You could scan a brain and go, oh, my conscious mind said, I'm totally okay with this behavior. But my brain shows in the area that dictates territory, right? And invaders and boundaries and sexual partners. There are observable imprints. This is, I'd say, a more precise version of trauma. You can say maybe hard trauma versus soft trauma that actually affects our biology. You can now see this on a brain scan, and your organs are going to take on that load. And we can't, our conscious mind can have a totally different story, but the body's going to tell the story. I'll leave it for there because there's a lot I can say. Back to you, Ginge. Just like we're in like a weather, like, or like a news studio. Like,
Yeah,
back to you.
over to you. You have to do like the
Yeah.
hand signals with
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so I'll just read a little bit more of her writing in the very first paragraph here. So she goes on to say, and I'll just recap. So she says, I always imagined myself in a traditional monogamy, but actually, I've only briefly experienced such a thing. The majority of my life was filled with deceptions and infidelity. That's a whole picture right there. Okay. As difficult as it has been to embrace this expansion of possibility, I have actually become the most free. It's paradoxical. I am the most safe compared to my prior experience. I can rest in the bedrock that there are no secrets between me and my husband, no surprises left to bite me. Period. What I want to say about this is there's actually a rightful trajectory here that I want to acknowledge and actually celebrate, because I think people will watch this video and think a lot of bad things like, oh, this is critique, this is critique, this is critique. Okay, let's just also acknowledge
Mm.
polyamory practiced with honesty is a step up from monogamy practiced with deception on some level. I'm not going to claim on the biological level for women, but on some level, it is a step up. So, like the formal structure behind that would be, if X is practiced unethically and Y is practiced ethically, then Y is greater than X. However, and this is the big however, this is the big but, this does not mean that Y, polyamory, is inherently superior to X, monogamy. Rather, that context is decisive, context matters. So, like, again, want to celebrate that honest polyamory, which I have no idea in real life if that is truly, truly what is happening, but theoretically, honest polyamory could be a healing step. Um, but if we are holding the values that you and I are holding, life force, safety for reproduction, for example, longevity and legacy building values, it's still not going to surpass ethical monogamy.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I do want to actually celebrate the deep truth that I can both feel and also logic in what she's sharing about, hey, my past sucked with monogamy. This is at least honest,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know,
And
like it's something.
I want to paint this analogy for you guys. It's like, imagine getting in a car, the monogamy car, and you're on a road trip, and it's like everyone is dishonest, just lying and deceiving each other. It's like that is gonna suck. And then you get into another car, the monogamy, or sorry, the polyamory car, and everyone's honest. Of course, you're gonna go, man, maybe it's the car, right? That is the cause of this. We're on the same road trip, we're relating, but it's so much better. Now it's a category error to go, oh, it's the car itself, literally the nuts and bolts that are improving this experience. Where in reality, it's the stepping into higher values and ethics within that container, which is what you're pointing to, Ginger. But I think that distinction is really important because so many statistics out there that are also a great way for people to go, oh, well, monogamy screwed. Here are the statistics, 60% of this, and that. And I think that points more to just human flaws and the fallen human than a structure. We can talk more about that as we go.
I would love to. I'm big on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. The car analogy or metaphor that really worked for me. All right. So this next piece, I don't know if I'm going to quote the entire thing, but essentially, she goes on to say, she goes on to say, this evolution has been the school that has taught me invaluable lessons in unconditional love, loving your whole partner, whole is in caps lock, in their entirety, not just the parts that make my ego comfortable, but the parts that invite me to love outrageously. I'm going to set that little phrase aside and circle back to it. To love outrageously and inclusively. This part is she's writing about unconditional love, and I think both you and I can agree. Unconditional love is a type of love. It's a type of love that can feel really good. What I want to point to here is that in romantic love, love is inherently conditional. How do I know that? If, for example, I were to say to her, and this will sound very harsh, but I don't mean it, in a very personal way at all. Look, I love that you're wanting to learn unconditional love. Why do that with this man that you already have an affinity for? Why not go and open your body to any man on the street if that is truly your desire here? If that is truly the value that you are backing and putting energy behind, right? And I mean, I would imagine that she would not want to do that. And then that would tell me about her values, which are conditions that she places on romance and romantic love. So, one other thing I need to say is unconditional love is really it's very properly situated in a parent child dynamic. It naturally blooms, and I hope to experience this sooner rather than later, but we can ask your lovely wife who's about to give birth. It will naturally bloom, and I'm sure you have the same sort of experience already coming online for you as a father to
Mhm.
be, through the heart of a parent towards a child, where the asymmetry of responsibility is totally natural. You are biologically wired to love this tiny little mammal so it survives, so that the species can continue. But applying principles of unconditional love, or like the ontological experience of unconditional love onto a romantic partnership, where mutuality is important, reciprocity is important, values, of course, are important. At least that's what they say. It's a categorical mistake. So she's trying to copy paste something onto something that actually doesn't belong there. And it doesn't belong there because, again, we could just say, okay, if unconditional love is really what you're after, just go and sleep with any man, any random man. Wouldn't that be a better teacher of unconditional love, for example? So the last thing that I want to say here is, when we practice, and this is like a very important point, when we practice or attempt to practice unconditional love in a romantic partnership, that basically always will necessitate, or at least imply, tolerating something anti our own values. So it actually implies tolerating devaluation of what we conceptualize as important to ourselves. That is a self-betrayal that will outpicture itself in all of the ways that you're going to talk about from the biological lens. But a self-betrayal is the thing that I can't stand for. So I am all for conditions in romantic love. Conditional love is a good thing in romantic partnership. Otherwise, we are essentially admitting we have no values. We value nothing. And I don't know about people listening or you, but I can't build with someone who has no values. And I also can't build with someone who doesn't share my values, AKA the conditions for building.
Mhm. Very, very well said. There's a couple directions I want to go in, but I'll first say that another word was used there, inclusive. And
Yes.
I don't think love is always necessarily inclusive, especially from the lens of compatibility, from the lens of discernment, preferences, values. In fact, if I were to s- uh, uh, define love as inclusive, then I'd have to include, like you said, the things that I don't want, or the things that are violations of what I value, or what brings me safety. Because wait, love is inclusive. So now I need to stretch myself to include that. But what I'm actually doing is I'm discluding myself.
Yeah,
You said there's the I
you're excluding your own values, which is a self-betrayal. And we're not,
exactly.
when you and I say self, we're not talking at the level of ego, we're talking at the level of soul or spirit.
Hmm.
Soul
Hmm.
or spirit. So
Hmm.
Sorry, I interrupted, but please, I just had to say
Yeah,
that.
no, that's it. And usually what happens in that moment is there's a kind of overwhelm. There's a kind of um, shock or unexpected oh moment where instinct arises and then it's overridden. And by definition, as soon as you override your instinct, so you're going from a true response to a conditioned response, which again, animals don't have. We can think symbolically. So we're going, oh, I should do this, right? The moment that override happens, there's also isolation. And those three conditions, isolation, overwhelm, and being caught off guard, have to produce a biological adaptation. Your biology will respond to it. And we can now see these on CT scans. So women that
I
don't
see.
feel chosen, they don't feel safe. Essentially, the question they're asking themselves is, can this person protect and provide for me and my children?
Mm,
If I'm having sex with them, there is a possibility of me being pregnant. Now, we can use contraceptives
mhm.
and modern technology and all of these things, but it doesn't change our biological response. There's
Right.
always that part of the psyche that goes, well, it's still possible I can get pregnant. So that instinct is always, it's going to be there, right? And the instinct says, if I'm in some sort of sexual conflict, meaning I don't know if he's going to stick around, I don't know how competent he is. And a female will date up in competency in the sense that if a man can generate more than her, and generate doesn't always have to look like money, but if he's very competent, if he has a kind of status typically based off competency,
Mhm.
the human animal is going to go, oh, I can relax. Because if I'm pregnant, it's inevitable that I'm going to be vulnerable. I won't be able to do everything myself, especially during pregnancy. So there is this built-in biological vulnerability in women in the childbirth process.
Yeah.
There's also an instinctual level of women that says a man could overpower me, kill me,
Mm,
abuse me.
mhm.
And there's generational trauma around this.
Yeah.
Right? So that instinctual reaction that says your hormones give you twice the bone density, strength, the physical
Prowess.
inequality,
Yeah.
yeah, prowess is going that instinctual response that says, okay, this could happen is going to be there. And so the counter in biology, what kind of counters or resolves or downgrades that response is feeling totally safe with a man and that he could use that to protect you, not to harm you. And
Yeah.
so safety is a requirement for a woman to come out of a sexual conflict. And a sexual conflict is the most common conflict in women. It's what produces yeast infections in German new medicine. And it's distress regarding sexuality. It could be turned on just from the fear of losing a sexual partner.
Mhm.
Um, pressure. Man, this man can't be the father of my child, but I'll sleep with him anyway and override that. These are all ways. Just one. I'm just going to give one right now, and I might bring more in that a
Mhm.
sexual conflict can turn on. Now, what's unique about that is as soon as a sexual conflict turns on, which I would imagine there's a lot of these in the polyamorous scene, I can't say for sure, is depression.
Mm.
So, female depression hits the left side of the temporal lobe, comes with the conflicts that have to do with the female's territory. And her territory is her sexual mate, the
Mm.
interior of the home, and her child. So,
Yeah.
reproduction. So, anything related to this, when conflicts arise, it's also what put women into depression. It could lead to infertility, manic depression, a lot of other things.
Yeah, and I feel for particularly for any women who are watching this who are unfamiliar with German New Medicine, and I myself am only very lightly familiar with it, although I have found so far in my experience it checks out. um, just to my invitation would be for you to hear Brandon through the ears of your mammal, not to listen through the lens of your prefrontal cortex. which has executive functioning capacity and, of course, can conceptualize of all sorts of other realities, but to not bypass the fact that you too are an animal, and as am I. We are mammals, we have mammary glands, we are governed by instinct first, at a level. And that doesn't mean that, of course, we don't have other parts of ourselves online to make decisions from. Of course we do. Of course we do. But at least, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, you're simply pointing to the fact that it's unwise to think that we can override tens of thousands of years of biology with a very new part of our brains.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And that your body will show you if you're successfully doing that or not.
exactly.
Um, one thing that is, well, I guess just one thing to notice is it's like our wiring. What I've noticed in my personal experience is when I submit to my wiring, I'm actually not controlled. There's not a feeling of I'm controlled by my human animal. It's that the human animal gets to be in its rightful place.
Yeah.
So I don't get jealous about around Natalie. And I don't know if I felt jealousy once, but I have felt territorial. So now there's this rightful use of what people might call jealousy, but it's from love. Men will not be territorial over things they don't love or they consider theirs. Um,
Over
and
things that
so,
they don't consider theirs. Men will not
yes,
be.
they don't consider theirs.
Yeah.
So a man could be in a relationship with a woman and not care about her too much and go, oh, well, go do whatever you want. But if he's going, I want you to be the mother of my children, his natural wiring is to be territorial,
Yeah.
right? Because again, we have to remember only the last 100 years have we not existed in maybe 200, like very tribal communities and hierarchies. So we have this kind of modern revolution that's replaced a very biological way of relating. And personally, I think it's because that men deep down all wanted to be the head of their own little kingdom called their household and
Mhm.
all emulate oh look, I'm an alpha, I'm the head of my house and I can provide and protect, and we don't have to do this whole let's battle each other, we can all win and have women. And I do actually think that's one of the drivers
Mm.
that women in their kind of like biological demand that they put on a man. Okay, it's very hard for women to go, oh man, you can't really provide for yourself. You kind of sit around all day. You don't have a lot of values. Let's mate. you know,
Yeah.
there's a kind of demand, and that says I value a man that can provide, protect. And I'm speaking on the biological level. There's other, of course, there's higher levels of value, but I'm speaking on the biological value. And that puts a kind of demand on a man that says, okay, I need to become skilled and competent. And his sex drive is twice as big as a female. So he starts to focus that sex drive and he starts to rise in competency. And when that's used right, man, it's created the world
Yeah.
that we're in. And I'm going a little off topic here, but I just
Yeah.
want to paint the picture that this biology, these instincts, at least as of now, besides people saying, oh yeah, I've overcome that, I have not seen any evidence that either modern technology or I don't know, wishful thinking or ayahuasca can turn off the instinctual bodily response, especially when sex and pregnancy,
Yeah.
when sex is involved because of pregnancy, because of real biological vulnerabilities. I don't believe that can be turned off, and you're kind of signing up for an inevitable conflict. And what I see is I don't know if I've seen one exception to chronic illness for men
Mm.
and women,
Mm.
but very often with the woman.
Yeah, I mean, we're the canaries in the coal mine, so to speak. So,
Mhm, mhm,
yeah, lots that I could add there, but I think that's even a subject for an entire other video together, to
mhm.
be honest. To bring us into the little snippet that I put to the side, because you're speaking about overriding instinct. there's this phrase that is embedded in her text. It's a very, very short phrase. And I want to point to it for a very specific reason. The phrase is, not just the parts that make my ego comfortable. So love your whole partner in their entirety, not just the parts that make my ego comfortable, but the parts that invite me to, quote, love outrageously. I just want to point to this phrase because for me, given my experience working directly with their spiritual mentor, his name is Mark Gaffney, that is a Mark Gaffney phrase. And so when I hear a woman using the phrase of a male spiritual teacher, but really any spiritual teacher, I get very curious about who that teacher is and what fruits their life is made of. And this is where I feel, some nervousness just in my body because, look, like there are plenty of people who have made lots of mistakes in life, myself included. I was married and I am divorced, for example. Um, thank God it was a very peaceful experience on the whole, and just so much honor to him. And we have no children together. Um, this particular spiritual teacher, who evidently, because he's also on this podcast with them, is advising this constellation of human beings on love, relationship, and for whatever reason, also on union, has been married and divorced 3 times and is not married. And this particular spiritual teacher is very well documented to, use this term, love outrageously, which then, of course, goes into love inclusively, which is an override of biology. It's an override, and it will never work for a woman, a female, who wants children specifically, which the author of this post does. She has said that publicly. So for any of the women watching, if anyone says to you, love outrageously, be more inclusive, open your heart more, just transcend and include, integral theory. We just have to ask ourselves, like, are we willing to override the deeper thing? So I wanted to point just to that phrase very specifically because look at the fruit.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's what, Natalie and I have kept coming back to is in a world of, especially social media, the facades we all can put on, the confusion, the redefining of terms. It's a land of confusion, right? But we can always come back to, okay, what are the fruits? And the fruits, yes, there's an external aspect to the fruits, but the fruits is also, for a male, he's resolving his territory conflicts, which is always going to involve his work and his intimate partnership. I mean, that's a man's territory because he's wired to provide and protect. The provide is going to be his work, his ability to create a territory, a home, money, that sort of thing. Protect is going to be his woman and his territory and his family. So that instinct is on as he resolves his territory conflicts, which, by the way, unresolved territory conflicts tank testosterone.
Right.
And Aubrey is taking TRT to replace his testosterone. And again, I've had territory conflicts. It's not a fun place to be. It does come with depression. And you can go between manic, you can go between primary. It's a hard place for a man. And the same is true for a woman. But as the conflicts resolve, the natural byproduct is more of their male traits are freed up because it's essentially prior to the conflict or after resolution, their temporal lobes open up again. When you're conflicted, the temporal lobe actually closes down. We call it being temporally castrated. So when that starts to open up, your maleness, your male traits that come with testosterone start to be expressed. You become more territorial. You become more aggressive, not in a hyper aggressive way. That's not actually of testosterone. If you have conflicts that bring your testosterone too high, well, then some of that converts to estrogen, and then you start feeling a lot more as a man. And a combination of high testosterone and then rising or high estrogen is actually what will make a man more hyper aggressive, not testosterone alone. Testosterone is very calming, actually.
Hmm.
So you have a man now resolving his territory conflicts. He's feeling territorial in a good way where he wants to protect things that he loves. He's very motivated to provide and protect. He's very loving. He loves bringing order to things. Uh, and he lives in his wiring, and his wiring biologically is if I'm going to have sex with a woman, I need to stick around long enough to see if we're going to have a kid. And the prolactin, when I have sex with you, the prolactin is going to discourage me from having sex with other people.
Hmm.
And the oxytocin is going to bond me to you. So things like sex addiction and whatnot often get resolved not through forcing yourself to abstain, although that's rightful in its own time, not through force, but through practice of abstinence. I think that's healthy. But the actually giving your sex, your sexual energy to a woman that you love, all of these bonding hormones turn on and you start to lose interest in other women. So there's this natural, I call it the biological perfection of a monogamous relationship. There are all these natural mechanisms that, number one, wire a man to stick around, wire him to lose interest and to protect and provide. And there's this role that he loves to fill. I mean, a man without territory conflicts means it simply means he's not depressed. It means he's just totally gets to be himself. There's joy, there's passion, all the things that, women love about men, at least very feminine women. And and so that's a path to a man fully submitting to his design but finding freedom in it, and it's built in, and he gets to turn that part of his brain off. That's okay. Where am I going to plant my seed? And that's
Mhm.
how that drive gets kind of placed into its proper place.
Yeah.
And there's a version of that for women. And so I would just say, and I guess my takeaway is when the maleness of a man and the femaleness of a woman is, I guess, reduced would be the word in terms of hormones, or is compromised due to conflict, biological conflict, which the most common form of territory conflicts is, again, for women. They're not feeling chosen. They're feeling like their man is not competent. They're feeling afraid. They're feeling like he could leave her. That if he's bonding with another woman with the same chemicals, her instinctual body is going, if I was pregnant tomorrow, I don't know for sure you're going to be bonded with me because you're bonded with her. It's a perfect scenario for conflict as long as those conflicts are alive. And again, my challenge, and I'm going to issue this in another video, is y'all go get your brain scan. I'll give you a link. Get your brain scanned. And if the relationship is actually having you love more outrageously, we will see a downgrading and a healing of these conflicts in your temporal lobe, because that's a true sign that your body is resolving. When I had my brain scanned, doctor who looked at mine said, "Oh, a year and a half ago, you were with a woman that you thought could have your children, and then she left you for another man."
Wow.
And I never told him a thing. And then he goes, "Oh, and when you were this age, he's like, in one moment, you felt like you let everyone down, not just your friends, but also your family. You were 17." And I was like, oh my God, I broke my collarbone senior year football. I felt like it was the first time I felt depressed. He got it down almost, I mean, he got the year down. The other one, he got it down to a month. He also looks at my brain and goes, also, are you writing a book? What book are you writing? He could tell I was writing a book. I mean, it's mind blowing, right? So my challenge is if you want to back this claim or just the reality of this is a path to evolved healing, then I want to see the biology match. And if it doesn't, then, well, that's where the work is to start resolving those conflicts. And my hypothesis, I could say, is that when we're unconflicted, monogamy and living, being a yes to our instinctual wiring is the most healthy relational dynamic for you, your partner, and also for the species.
Bold claims in this day and age, Brandon. Bold.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what I love about this perspective challenge is, again, it's not coming from religion, it's not coming from dogma, it's not coming from tyrannical, authoritarian, Handmaid's Tale type force. It's like, no, look, just look at what works. Holistic health all the way up and down the chain. More life force all the way up and down the chain. More life, literally, through, for example, children, um, at scale. You know,
Mhm.
pretty simple. So yeah, do you mind if I take us into the next little
Absolutely, yeah.
part? Great, fantastic. Thank you. Um, yeah, so and you'll probably have more to say about this, but there's a particular um, sentence that stood out to me right after the part that we just spoke about, the love outrageously and inclusively part. And then she says, I want to be that woman. Capital W for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but I want to be that woman, the one who loves the whole partner, loves outrageously, and so on and so forth. What that entails is she acknowledges that she is not that woman. That's an entailment inherent in her language choice. She goes on to say something that caused me a lot of bodily pain, but I moved through that. So I'm just going to like deliver the line neutrally. She says, I want my children to have that woman as their mother and that model of the divine feminine. Um, so what I want to point to here is there's a volitional, it's a very strange term, but it's a volitional value substitution. So on principle, we can't volitionally will ourselves to value something we do not value. If we are aspiring to be
Mhm.
someone whose values contradict our own, right? Because she's saying, I'm not that woman. I want to be that woman. I am not that woman. I want to model that template to my children, that thing over there that I am not. So if she's aspiring, if I am aspiring to be someone who contradicts my own values, right? Currently, that is not self-actualization. That is deep psychological disintegration. That is, again, a self-betrayal. It's a, in sort of spiritual language, you could call it a soul fracture, but it's on a mental level, and you can talk about it from the instinct. It's contradictory of what you value. How do you think that will play out, particularly as a mother to children? How do I, if I were to live antithetical to what I value and attempt continuously to be contorting myself and pretzeling myself into something else that on some level in my psyche I want, but it's still external to me. And so I'm living in this pretzeled way. How do we think that would impact my children? I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm posing the question because it's an important one to pose.
Mhm.
Um, so there's this just deep level of dissonance, which I'm sure you can speak to from the GNM perspective. Dissonance, conflict, right? Same, essentially. Fingers
Mhm.
crossed.
Mhm. Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
so please, yeah,
Well, it's so to model, if I'm modeling dissonance, there has to be a sense of a lack of safety because the mechanism that motivates me to, let's say, hold on to the dissonance
mm,
and choose it is that for some reason it's in my best interest.
right,
I need
right,
to I need to hold on to this dissonance. I'm getting something out of it, but it's at the cost of my instinct. So
yeah,
that the cost of what I'm getting out, and it might be, you know, the relationship, not avoiding loss.
yeah, of course,
The paradox is what you think you're getting out of it is safety, but it's actually the thing that's keeping safety away.
yeah,
Now, if I'm dissonance and I play this part, which is a spiritual ideal, it'll give me something that I lack. So the modeling is that lack of
yeah,
whatever it is, and it's typically safety. And children, especially when they're really young, their delta waves, their theta waves are just the dominant brain waves. So they have to absorb from the environment. They are almost one with their environment. So they're just taking it all in. And it's not, there's no shame to, the mom for experiencing that. Everyone will have their own form of dissonance from time to time. But there's also an opportunity to get really honest and unsuppress what I believe is not only just natural, our natural instinct, but would completely take us into safety because the instinct knows what is safe and what is not safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even tell you how many times, both in my own life and then in the lives of my clients, where we have overridden our own needs because as children, whether through modeling, fractured templates of relating between our mother and father, or whether, whatever we got, speaking of that space of being so open and receiving everything, and it's all just reality, right? There's no
Mhm.
filter. How many of my clients, and again, this is like something that I experienced as well, we learned to override our needs because that was the only way to get some version of those needs met.
Yep.
It was the only way. So of course, from a survival place, that's what we're going to continue to do because we know no other way. We weren't templated with the rightful hierarchy, parent-child dyad, mother-baby dyad of mother unconditionally nourishes child.
Mhm.
Child is unconditionally attuned to, maybe not gratified, but certainly attuned to father, structure, boundaries of reality. This is a yes, this is a no.
Mhm.
No is firm. No can be pushed against and it stays put.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? So a lot of us didn't receive those templates growing up. And so then we look and we see, wow, okay, this is the only way that I can get this need of mine for safety met. So yeah, of course I'm going to accept, this small amount of love over here, or this trade-off over there, or, this, and believe me, and Brandon, you know this a little bit from my background and life story and all that. That is also a part of the journey. Like, I'm not here
Mhm.
again, same as the beginning, we said free will, free will, free will. We're not here to knock anybody's path, but rather, again, here in service of the women who already know me, or the men and women who already know you and are like confused and kind of getting whacked by this whole thing, to say like, look, your path is your path, and just be aware, like broaden your awareness just a little bit, just ratchet it up a little bit so that you understand that, first of all, your needs are valid. Second of all, there are ways to get your needs met in totality inside of one-to-one partnership union. That will only happen, however, if you back your needs, if you actually permission your instinctive needs and desires. Because if you don't permission them, there's no place for them to go.
Mhm.
No, if there's no approval of them, which is what we see in society, dampening down on all of these like total needs for men and for women. There's no approval there. Of course, we're going to try to outsource them elsewhere. Of course, because we need them. They have to be
Mhm.
met now. And I've done
Mhm.
that myself. I had open relating dynamics in a previous relationship. I was trying to outsource my very real needs because I didn't believe that it was possible to get them all met through one man. I didn't even believe that that could be
Mhm.
possible. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll leave that there.
Yeah, well, I think it's just so important because I think one of the background beliefs in this whole conversation is that, well, we can't get all our needs met by one person. And of course, we don't, act as if, hey, okay, your job, just fulfill my needs. You're the need fulfiller. It's like we don't come in with that energy. But in true compatible relationship, the other person wants to fulfill your needs and it's natural for them. In fact, it probably brings out the best in them. And so it's like, it's not a have to, it's I want to. And when two people want to fulfill each other's needs rightfully, you have so much appreciation and respect and love and connection. There, the need to look elsewhere dwindles in the full commitment to one person that does require a sacrifice of that little boy or girl that says, well, this is how I used to find safety, but I'd have to be out of integrity, or I'd have to lie, or I'd have to withhold. It's like, yes,
Mhm.
all of that has to come up and be integrated for the more authentic, real, transparent, mature you to
Mhm.
arrive. And in my opinion, that really can only happen in a relational context in monogamy, because it's the most direct mirror, the absolute containment, the okay, if this gets a little hard, I'm just going to leave. You're not going to, you don't give yourself the opportunity for that level of healing and reclamation to happen, because union on many levels is a technology. It's I think what Christianity kind of implies with God instituted marriage, I think that two people, when they come together in truth, highlight where the absence of truth, or they highlight where they're not in truth, and without conceding to the fear of being seen and revealed, there
Mhm.
is just this continuous opening. And when two people open into one, you have that one, or that third kind of creation, which is God in that relationship. I don't think it can happen with three. Um, that's just my personal belief.
Mhm.
Mainly because that is often, at least from what I've seen from my personal experience, a way to escape the narrow path of union. It's just what I've seen.
Sure. Yeah, and again, like, we're not here to knock on people's life choices, like, everybody has their path. Cool, do what you wanna do, just, like, acknowledge the reality of what it is you're doing and acknowledge the
Hmm.
trade-offs. And
Hmm.
then acknowledge that, like, if it's hurting your body and you're still gonna continue with that, then you accept the responsibility of all the consequences that come with hurting your body. It
Hmm.
is what it is, like, we have free will for a reason. Like, we are sovereign beings in a very free will dimension here.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Even something like, I acknowledge I am going against my instincts. It's really hard. It's also hard on my body, but I'm
yes,
learning and growing so much. I'm choosing this.
totally.
It's fine. That's totally fine. That's very
Yeah,
different than I am on a very advanced path that humanity is eventually going to catch up to, which is always either explicitly said or implied. And that's where the like spiritual idealism starts to override instinct, and people get so confused. Go, it is what I'm feeling an instinct, or is it just my ego, and I just need to work through it? And you work through it for years and years and years, and it's still there. And
totally.
that is that's an intense journey.
Oh my gosh. And wow, like, how much life force is sort of trapped in a loop there. It's like this magical thinking is basically what you're pointing to. If I love it enough, it will become
Hmm.
true. If I love
Hmm.
him enough, I will expand myself. If I da da da, this thing that's not true right now will become true. Um, okay, so like we can't actually override objective conditions. Um, it's mystical idealism. It's
Hmm.
not it's not grounded. It's not. It is literally irrational.
Hmm. Hmm.
Irrational, meaning not grounded in rationality. It's yeah, I rest my case.
Yeah, yeah,
What else
yeah.
to say, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay, look, there's an entire philosophy called objectivism. If you really wanna get nerdy about it, you can get nerdy about it. I'm not 100% an objectivist, but I do appreciate a really grounded dose of, you know, there is such a thing as objective truth. That's something you and I
Hmm.
were discussing before we hit record, and, that's not to say that like you nor we're not gods over truth. Like neither of in fact, we are submitted to truth. We are
Hmm.
literally at the behest of truth. It is over us hierarchically. Doesn't matter how I feel, how you feel. There is something that has a cause and effect relationship on
Hmm.
our reality that is communal.
That's right.
There it's kind of like gravity, even though we technically can't understand fully what gravity is, where does it come from, why does it exist? Nobody's jumping off of buildings to test whether or not gravity exists.
Hmm.
So,
And that's again why I love the biological perspective, because we see, oh wait, there is a designer. I
hmm,
don't remember designing that. I mean, let's just go to our direct experience. Did I design the special biological programs of my body that
totally.
react to biologically shocking events? Did I design it? No. Okay, so
No.
there's a designer. If I submit to the design, here's paradox, the heart and this is just something I've been playing with, but I think in the heart of a lot of truth, there is a paradox, not a contradiction.
Yeah.
And that is if I submit to this design, I'll actually find the things I'm looking for: freedom, health, energy, right? And that's why the same roles in relationship apply. There's always going to be one person in a submissive role, one person in it. That's always going to happen. But when it's rightful, freedom, joy, energy, um, it's a microcosm, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's one last piece I want to say here. I might even quote it slightly off, but it's something to the effect of if hang on, let me rewind. There's something that I want to say that I might quote imperfectly, but it's something like, even though we might not understand why something works, the fact that it works over and over and over and over again. And I understand people could take this and say, well, monogamy doesn't work. Marriage doesn't work. Look at the divorce rates. No, I'm talking about working in terms of when it is applied by design, it produces an outcome that is in service of life. Checks the box. So we don't have to know why something works in order for it to work. And how arrogant would I be if I were to say, little old me over here in 2025, saying, those tens of thousands of years of humanity, biology, evolution, all of that, I think I'm better than that. I'm going to be the exception here. I'm going to override all of that. I'm going to transcend all of that, and I'm going to write a new story, and not just for me, but for everybody. Oh, and I'm also going to write a book about it. I'm going to write lots of books about my journey. Oh, I'm also going to speak about it to millions of people and try and convince them of my way. Uh, you can hear, I mean, obviously I could keep going along that track. It doesn't really matter. The point is we don't have to know why something works to know that it works. And unfortunately, to sort of like our conversation about the flaws of marriage in this day and age, not a lot of people know that that design works. They have not seen it work functionally, but that doesn't mean that the design is imperfect. To your
Mhm.
point earlier about mortal human fallibility, you know, so, and I really resonate with your approach. I just genuinely appreciate how tactile it is, and
Mm,
how health based it is, how
mm,
vital it is. So yeah, I believe on my end anyway, I've said most of what I wanted to say. And I hope, you and I obviously can continue this conversation, but I hope that at least for specifically for the women watching, that I've been able to give you some language because in our felt sense experience, women, like, this, your wife is very instinctual. Like
mhm.
she'll read something and she won't even, like, I know her very personally, she'll
Yeah,
read something and she'll be like, ugh, like, no,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I'll be like, "What did it say?" She's like, "I don't even know at this point. I just feel it."
totally. Like, 0 attention to the specific language, but she knows that it's
Mhm,
just off. And I respect that deeply, and I feel that in myself, and I also desire to, like, because I know a lot of women have a very, fluid sense of self, right? Like, we're not
mhm,
necessarily always thinking about our moral principles and our deepest values. Like, that's a very logos type place
mhm,
to exist in, which I just happen to have a propensity towards given my upbringing. But no, I mean, I really desire to give women language such that, if they encounter a man out in the world saying, hey, babe, just expand your capacity to love,
mhm.
they can be like, no.
How about no?
No, thank you. And no, thank you is also a perfectly valid response. There's no
Mhm.
need to, like, justify either. But,
Yeah.
it's useful to have the the interconnection and vocal connection to our instinctual no. And then it's also sometimes useful to have a little language just in case. It's like the backup option.
Mhm, mhm. And I love everything you just said. There were so many little threads, but just to wrap it up, I'll double click on, um, if I'm not willing to submit to observable, repeatable, objective truth, then I will become the arbiter of truth. Like I will become God. So if I
Exactly.
can't acknowledge there is a design that I am at the mercy of,
Mhm.
but that it's actually for me. The fifth law of German New Medicine is called quintessence. It says everything in nature is happening for the organism to survive, to reproduce. It's all happening for you. It's a biological principle. And so, actually, if I submit to that design, I would assert that's a very mature form of love, non-personal love,
Yeah.
and it's also very self-loving. And then from that place, the responsibility to bear, okay, I'm going to decide what's true and how to do it. And it's like, I can let it go. And there can be a natural response that's actually already built in. And I can just let that be. I call that authenticity. It's hard to like it down, but
Mhm.
some form of just being in the absence of, okay, I'm going to create the world in my image
Mhm.
against some objective truth. Well, in the absence of that, in the submission of an objective, the observable objective truth, especially around our biology as animals, I mean, like the most personal thing, right?
Mhm.
Um, the good news is it contains freedom, joy, health, and it contains the thing we think we need to go out there and figure out and get.
Right.
And so it's like this returning to right relationship with human animal that actually does elevate us and ground us so we can reach up higher into human spirit and exhibit the traits like self-control, all the things that can, break marriages. We can
Mhm.
exhibit the opposite of those traits. And for women, it sounds like a man saying, "Hey, I want you. I choose you. I want you and only you. I want to be with you for the rest of your life. I want you to have my children. I want to create a legacy with you. And I'm just absolutely committed to loving you because I'm wired to love and you're wired to be loved. And I'm going to give you the world." And I think most women, when they feel that, relax versus, just follow your truth. Follow connect with whoever you want. It's okay. It doesn't bother me. You're free. Go be free. I don't know how many women instinctually go, that feels really safe to me. I think there's actually a wait a second. What's my role here? And I do think males can instinctually create a kind of order or be like arbiters of order
Mhm.
that produces a lot of safety and
Totally.
belonging.
I gotta jump in here because, like, look, you don't know this about me necessarily, but I had sort of the rebellion against that
Mhm,
order template growing up, right? So I was more of on the track of my experience anyway. This
mhm,
is not me at the level of like actual essence, but given upbringing and so on and so forth, I had that phase of saying, "No, like, I don't like, if a man had given me that amount of freedom, it would have, at certain points in my life, felt, quote, unquote, felt very good, quote, unquote, to those parts of me that
mhm,
not able to receive the fullness of love, thought that love was a trap, felt, protective against my own protective around my own, independence, which of course would be hyper independence. There was actually no relatedness, no receptivity to being
mm,
connected in union at that point in.
mhm,
So a lot of women might hear you say what you just said and have an averse reaction and think, "Well, that's my instinct. That's my instinct saying, no, like, I
mhm,
can't be submitted to that because that's a trap," you
mhm,
know?
mhm.
Or men too, right? Obviously. But yeah, what do you have to say about that in the
Yeah,
GM?
that's really good.
Yeah.
So it would be that. So again, I said in the beginning, humans have the ability to create symbols of reality,
Yeah.
and they'll stay on repeat in your psyche, and you'll copy and paste that symbol from an unreconciled past onto a relationship in order to get in touch with it, because at this point it's likely unconscious, as that's the way brain psyche protects itself. So I might have an unreconciled experience of feeling totally dominated. And I have all of the association, a man in authority wanting to control me or contain me, or, there can be many
Take
different
away
trigger
my
points.
rights,
Right. Take away my freedom because I felt so not free as a child. And so then, see, the difference with an animal is they leave that situation, they shake and they're done. It's done. They never recreate it. We will continue to be in relationship with someone we're no longer physically in relationship to our entire lives because the relationship lives here.
Yeah.
So we'll recreate that. And this is where it goes to the fifth law in GNM of quintessence. We'll recreate that in our relationships until we start to see, am I in relationship with this man, or am I in relationship with this shadow figure I'm pasting on the man? And I have to be really, the key to this is self-honesty. Okay, in this moment, is he trying to control me? Am I being dominated? Am I being limited right now in this moment as this offering or whatever in reality is happening?
Yeah.
In reality, is this happening to me? Or is it what I'm thinking, feeling, and believing? And if I can get in touch and go, oh, it's actually not him, it's what I'm thinking about him and thus feeling, I can look at that and question that. I can process the unreconciled event and actually dissolve it to the degree I don't need to ruminate. And then I can be in relationship with this person. And how you can tell is I'm not charged about it anymore. I might, a preference doesn't really feel like a big charge. It's like if I say, do you want coffee or tea? You go, no, coffee. It's not like coffee, it's like, so now this charge leaves and you can go, oh, in the absence of that charge, do I move towards this or not? And it's more sober. It's not really high. It can't be really low. And so that's the job. It takes a lot of self-honesty to look at, is it reality right now? Is this man taking my freedom? Or where we go in like my courses and whatnot, we question the possibility that someone else can truly just like take freedom from you. Like it's like in your fanny pack and they're like, I got your freedom. So these are all things to investigate.
Thank you. Very, very valuable. Definitely very here for dissolving feminine pain body. And I appreciate how you articulated that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger.
Anything else from your side?
Well, just lastly, what I'll say is from my experiences, Natalie and I, we've had, I think everyone can relate, challenging past experiences with relationships. But one sign, and that's an understatement, but one sign, like I have learned a lot because I've got it wrong so much. I mean, I'm not religious about human design, but I'm like the great experimenter who learns through failing. It's also a very male trait, is to just like suffer and learn and grow, So that's me. And Natalie and I, in our first year, I've resolved 4 chronic symptoms, and she's resolved 3 to 4. I got my brain scan so I could actually see what happened. She's resolved, but for her, just based on her symptoms, her acne, some sexual stuff, some other stuff, she has resolved. And I just say, like, your body knows if you're living in line with an instinct that's designed to support you and to get to fully live this human experience, how you're designed. And the design is good. It's a good design. So there's hope. And yes, it did require so much honesty. The sacrifice, I like the definition of sacrifice. Well, I'm giving up something of lower value for something of higher value. But a man who sacrifices voluntarily matures. So when I sacrifice voluntarily for something greater than me, like a value or a person like Natalie, I mature. I mature because I stop feeding the selfish needs of a little child in me that goes, I just want pleasure. I just want fun. And, pleasure, nothing wrong with pleasure and fun. But you start going, is that number one, should I spend most of my time there? And as you go kind of up the scale, man, there's so much freedom in the monogamous relationship because of who you're becoming. And so there are ways to do it, and ours is not perfect, but I don't think anyone's is perfect.
Mhm.
But it's really great. It's really great.
Mm. And baby is almost here.
Yeah, any day.
And he
Maybe today. Maybe right now he's in the other room.
That would be so huge. Like, "Hey,
Yeah.
babe."
But she jokes all the time. She's like, "I'm gonna do it when you're sleeping, just here on the toilet." And I'm like,
She's so creepy, I love her so much, it's great.
any last words from you, Ginger?
Just thank you. Man, you and I obviously could keep going for another hour, 3 hours, 5 hours. No, I just genuinely hope that this serves. I hope that it can be taken with judgment in the sense of value judgment, certainly. Um, Discernment, certainly, but not necessarily like a moralistic judgment. And I hope that because again, I would really just love for everyone to experience a lot of very natural life force that is sustainable, that shows up on a brain scan. To your point, that can really further their legacy in the world in a way that serves life. That's it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So great, Ginger. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Love your brain.